Kennel Ration, America's first canned dog food, invites you to television's original Zoo Parade. Brought to you direct from the world-famous Lincoln Park Zoo in Chicago. Hello there. I'm Jim Hurlbut, and I'm here at Chicago's Lincoln Park Zoo, which is operated by the Chicago Park District for the benefit of people everywhere. This is our 71st Zoo Parade program this afternoon, and we're awfully glad that you and your homes across the country can be with us again. This afternoon, we're going to see some of the unusual ways that animals are helpful to men. Now, you wouldn't think that big electrical organizations or construction companies would use animals in their work, particularly not a little fellow like this, but they do. And the man with him who's going to tell us about it is Marlin Perkins, director of the Lincoln Park Zoo.
Hello there. I'm glad you could join us again this afternoon. And as Jim has told you, this little ferret named Napoleon, hi boy, this little ferret is used sometimes by electrical companies in order to pull big heavy cables through pipes in the ground. Well, in order to get a big heavy cable, this little ferret wouldn't be able to pull that, but he does pull a string through a pipe. Because of his unusual body shape, he can crawl through conduits or pipes and pull a string through, and then a string can pull a rope, and then the rope can pull the conduit. In order to give you an idea of how that works, we have here a little lure for this ferret, an egg, which I'm going to break here. Boy, look at that egg. Isn't that wonderful? That's a soft-boiled egg. Now, Lear, if you'll start the ferret in the other end of this long pipe here, you want to taste that? Now, that's what you're coming in for. Start him in the other end of that long pipe, and come on here now, Napoleon. Come on, boy. Come on. Come on in the pipe here. Come on. Come on, let's go, boy. That's right. Come on, look at here. We got some food for you. That's right. Come on, Napoleon. Hey, you can see his eyes coming through this pipe. Come on, boy. Come on. Come on, little Napoleon. Come on, here you are. Come on, here. Come on, here you are.
Oh,
here you are. Look at that. Come on through and get this wonderful food for you. Well, you have to come clear out to get it. Whoop, 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 whoop. Come on, Napoleon. You aren't hungry today. Well, that's a shame. Come on, that's right. Come on now, come on, that's right. Come on through, that's right. Now you can get that. The only trouble with this is that the string got lost in there somehow or other. We didn't have it tied very firmly to him. But at least, folks, that's the way it works. And there is an animal, the ferret, that is put to a very unusual use by man. And there are many, many animals that are put to unusual uses by man. And that's...
What's another one, Marl? I think this is wonderful, but what's another unusual use that...
Well, let me transfer this little fellow over. Now, you want to finish eating over there with Lear?
He doesn't want to leave that egg right now.
Yeah. Well, Jim, there are many animals that have most unusual uses. As a matter of fact, our whole civilization today is built around animals in one form or another. And our civilization as such could not exist, believe me, without the use of animals. But one of the most unusual animals that is used by man, I think, is a little animal that lives in a cage like this.
What's that cage?
Well, Jim, actually, this cage is a sort of a barometer.
Really?
Yeah. Tells you when it's going to rain and when it's going to be clear weather. And I'll show you how that works. I can lift the top of this little box off here, and inside this little box is a tree frog, and he has some damp moss in here. Then he has this little porch outside, little screened-in front porch, and that whole thing now, with the dampness in here and the dryness out here, is a kind of a barometer that these little tree frogs are useful.
Why, how?
Well, in real damp weather, the little frog comes out here. Then you know it's going to rain.
That's because there's no moisture out there except it's in the air.
That's right, Jim. And then when the weather is real dry and the little frog needs moisture, you know, in his skin, he goes inside the house, and that's the way you tell wherever the position of the frog is. If he's in the house, then you know that it's going to be dry weather. If he's out in front here, you know it's going to be rainy weather.
Is that reliable enough for people to use, actually?
Well, it's used, Jim, all over Europe, and there are many places in this country where people keep a little tree frog around their house in order to have a little barometer like this one. And it works pretty good, too. I wouldn't say it's infallible, but at least it's pretty good.
Well, I think it's wonderful. It's certainly an unusual use. How about another one? You got another?
I certainly do. Lear, do you want to take the barometer here? I'll trade you. Here is a bull snake, and you might think that he's all right, Jim. He's harmless.
I'm glad to hear that.
No, he won't bite you at all. And if he did, he's perfectly harmless. You know, there isn't any animal in the world that is a more efficient mouser than a snake of this sort. This is a constricting type snake that gets around its prey and squeezes it to death.
Well, he's actually very helpful to farmers, I suppose.
Well, Jim, he is exceedingly helpful to farmers because with his elongated body, he can crawl right down a mouse hole or a rat hole and get the whole family.
He doesn't think I'm a rat by any chance.
All right. No. In order to show you how that works, we have a glass tube here that simulates the hole of a mouse or a rat that leads way down into the ground. If I can get him started. Now, you crawl in this glass tube. Attaboy. Go on. Amazing. That's it. Crawl right on through the glass tube here. And you see, this is only a short tube. If that hole in the ground led down several feet, well, then this bull snake could climb right on down there, and he would get the whole family down there.
Well, that's certainly an interesting story, but if I might interrupt for a moment, I brought along an animal story of my own today. So what do you say we look and listen to the case of the undernourished dog?
It's a letter from Towser McGonigal. Listen to what he has to say.
I was once a 7.5-pound weakling. I lacked pep and was in a general rundown physical condition. Nothing seemed to interest me. Finally, I decided to see my family physician.
My boy, you're not getting enough vitamins and minerals. You need more lean red meat.
Now, thanks to kennel ration, I've regained my former pep and energy.
Thank you, Towser McGonigal, for telling us about kennel ration, the healthful food for dogs and cats made with lean red meat.
Well, quite seriously, friends, kennel ration is wonderful food for your dog because it's packed with the lean red meat he needs and craves. Fine cuts of U.S. government-inspected horse meat. Matter of fact, kennel ration is the kind of food my dog eats, and boy, does he love it. So be sure to look for this can when you buy. Kennel ration, America's first canned dog food. Well, Marlon, that's my story. Now, how about another one of yours?
Well, Jim, I think everyone recognizes the value of animals as producers of leather. And one of the greatest producers, or not the greatest, but one of the producers of some of the most unusual leather in the world is our friend the alligator. Here's a young alligator, and it's from creatures of this sort that such wonderful things as, say, a lady's shoes like this are made. You can see the similarity there between the scales there and that on the little alligator. The ladies love it, but so do the men, because they make wallets like this one out of alligator leather, and that is a marvelous use for an animal like an alligator that at one time was exceedingly abundant in the swamps of the southern part of the United States.
Well, Marlon, I can understand the use of alligator leather because we all know about that, but what are some of the other uses of an alligator as far as man's concerned?
Jim, there are many uses of alligators, and one of them has to do with the way they live in the swamps in the southern part of this country. In Florida, for example, most of the alligators live in the Everglades or in the swamps in the deep in that part. And there the alligator digs a burrow, a den, way down under the water in the swamp, and he makes a place where he can go out away from the water there. And then when the swamp dries up a little later on, then the alligator leaves that hole, and that hole is still available then in the swamp for all of the other creatures of the swamp area to come and get a drink.
Well, he makes spring holes then, in other words.
He makes definite spring holes because he gouges out enough of the soil from the bottom of that den site to reach the spring water deep down under the ground. Those go down about 15 feet.
Well, I think today we've seen the most unusual use of all of the alligator. And I think the thing that happened at the Lincoln Park Zoo this morning is certainly one of the most exciting things It's happened out here in a long time, and our friend the alligator was the hero of the whole episode, wasn't he?
Well, he was in a way, Jim. You see, folks, today we had an unusual experience here at the Lincoln Park Zoo. Of course, a zoo is never a dull place, but today the Lincoln Park Zoo was a very exciting place because this morning about 9 o'clock, our full-grown gorilla, Bushman, got out of his cage. He didn't get out of the building, but he was in the building. And after we were able to shut off some doors and keep him from getting into the other part of that building, then we were able to drive him away from the kitchen part of the building with this little alligator. Believe me, this very same alligator. Because Bushman is deathly afraid of a little alligator, Jim.
Like that?
We put a string on the alligator, reached through a window, and acted like we were going to toss this alligator on Bushman. And he moved then away. And then with the use of a little snake on the other side, which he's also just a little garter snake this long, he was afraid of that. And with the aid of this alligator and a little garter snake, we were able to get Bushman to go back in his cage where he safely is resting there right now.
Well, I think that's a tremendous story, but I'm amazed that a big fellow like Bushman would be afraid of a little snake, even though I am myself.
Well, we're awfully happy that it is, Jim, because it gave us a chance to get him back in his cage. And this animal, which weighs almost 500 pounds, is not a nice creature to have loose even in the building, in the monkey house.
But I know that thousands and thousands of his friends all over the country are glad to know that he's back in his cage and all safe and well. Marlon, that's a most unusual story of an unusual use of an alligator. How about another story of an unusual use of an animal?
All right, Jim. Let's talk about the bird family. The birds that have supplied mankind for so many years with feathers of all sorts. Here is a golden pheasant, and the golden pheasant has supplied man with feathers, and many, many other birds have supplied man with feathers for all kinds of uses. Many of these feathers from the birds are used in novel ways, and one of the most unusual of those, I think, one of the most novel of the uses of these feathers is in tying flies for going fishing.
Well, I could do that.
And here is a series of those flies, and they're tied for, just take little feathers, and they strip them off and tie them around the hook and make these little flies, which the fly fishermen dearly love.
They're very good bait, I might add.
They're excellent, and they're bright colors, which any person would delight the heart of any fisherman. Not only are these feathers from that of the golden pheasant, but from many, many other birds. They're used in hat decorations and in all sorts of other decorations. As a matter of fact, a series of feathers like this one would be a pretty nice decoration to have around the house just in itself. And so they use these to decorate hats. They're used in many, many ways around for all kinds of decorative purposes, and that is another excellent use, Jim, of animals by man.
But actually, the birds aren't the only animals that furnish a part of themselves for decoration and covering for man. Isn't that true?
Oh, Jim, how true. Many of the animals have a very valuable pelts, you know, like our little friend here, Sweet William. Little Sweet William here has a very excellent pelt. This is a little tame skunk.
I can see why he's called Sweet William.
Yeah. And, Jim, the world is just full of all kinds of wonderful animals like Sweet William here that are trapped and are used by the ladies and the men in all sorts of ways. And one of the most useful ways of using the pelt of a creature like Sweet William here is, of course, in the form of a fur coat. And the fur coat of a skunk, which is not as common today as it was before, is still a very good fur. And, by the way...
You mean it makes a fur coat like this one?
Oh, by the way...
I see William he recognizes me.
Oh, what a wonderful model you are, Jim. Yeah, well, you can see here now, in this coat, they've taken the white part out of the skunk, and you're using only the black fur. And the furriers have learned all sorts of tricks like that in order to use the furs of the animals. So you'll find that whole continental areas have been opened up, as our North American continent was, by the fur trade, the people who were in for beaver and for otter and for all the other animals that are valuable as pelts and has played a tremendous important part in the exploration of the world, and particularly in the exploration of the North American continent. So that you'll have a group of animals then that are providing still wonderful pelts for all kinds of purposes. Another very interesting use, Jim, of animals is with the beast of burden. Marshall Head, our NBC photographer, visited the Madison, Wisconsin Zoo recently and shot some very interesting film showing the use of camels. So let's see the camels in the Madison, Wisconsin Zoo as they are used as beasts of burden. You know, there are many animals that have been used as beasts of burden, but the camel is one of the most unusual of those because we don't normally think of camels as being used as beasts of burden. These camels come from Asia and Africa and are used with a saddle. This tripod now is what the camel used to lie down on. When he folds his legs, he has that little calloused part in his chest in order to lie down. The Shriners of Madison, Wisconsin donated these animals to the zoo and to the director, Mr. Harold Hayes, and were very helpful to us in allowing us to shoot these pictures, showing how each Sunday they ride the children on their camels. Every Sunday morning, the children of that area come into the zoo grounds, and they're lifted up onto the camels, and they have a free ride around a section of the riding paddock where the camels carry the children. There are two kinds of camels. The big double-humped camel of Asia, which is the heaviest of the lot and is used as a tremendous beast of burden, and the single-hump, which is now confined mostly to Africa. And the light-colored ones here are the riding camels of Egypt, which are the fastest of all the camels and are the easiest riding of all the camels. The dromedary here, whoa boy, he kind of pulled back there a little bit. These animals, of course, travel out, and they're called the ships of the desert, and the reason why they're able to travel across shifting sands is because of the feet of these animals, with their enormous pads, are broad enough so that they will not sink down into the sand. You can see how these feet spread as the camels walk there. What a wonderful ride she had, and what a thrill she'll never forget in the ride that she had at the zoo. And I'm sure that you'll find that there'll be many camels in many parts of the United States, and there may be even camels in your own zoo. So perhaps the next time you visit your own zoo, you'll have a chance to see your own camels and perhaps even have a ride.
I think that's an unusual use, by the way, of an animal, but personally, I'll stick to my automobile. We have some kind of close relatives to the camel around in this section of the world, haven't we?
Yes, Jim. You know, the only beast of burden in all of the Americas, when the white man first came over here, when the white men first came over here, were the llamas that were domesticated in South America by the Incas. Here is Betsy, a wonderful little llama that was born right here in the Lincoln Park Zoo. And little Betsy is just a fine pet and typical of these sure-footed beasts of burden, members of the camel family that are found in South America, domesticated from the guanacos. The guanacos are the wild members of this family from which the llamas were domesticated, and also domesticated at about the same time were the alpacas, and they likewise were domesticated from this same creature, the guanaco. so that you have a llama as a beast of burden and a guanaco as a wool-producing animal. There is the wool of an alpaca is a tremendously interesting fiber. Here we have just a big gob of that wool just as it comes off of the animal. When this is all carded out and made into yarn and then woven into a cloth, it's one of the finest cloths in the world. I at one time had a suit made from alpaca cloth, and it was one of the finest suits I've ever had. And I know that many of the men and women will instantly remember the alpaca cloth coats and suits that came at one time from this fine animal. So you have here a double thing, Jim. You have one group of animals that were domesticated as beasts of burden, these llamas, and the alpacas that were developed from the same animal as wool producers. Well, now, speaking of wool, Jim, just run your fingers through that llama's hair. Did you ever feel such a fine coat of fur?
Oh, that's wonderfully nice and soft. You know, Marlon, I don't believe any of our viewers today have a llama as a pet, but I know that lots of them have dogs. And if they'd like to have the same kind of thick, healthy coat for their dog, I'd like to recommend a steady diet of meat. So, Marlon, while you get our next little guest ready, I'd like to tell all dog owners about kennel racing and why it's the #1 seller of all U.S. government-inspected canned dog foods. You know, the makers of kennel racing realize how much dogs need and crave meat. So into kennel racing, they put big chunks of fine, lean, red meat, fine cuts of U.S. government-inspected horse meat. It has all the known dog health vitamins and all the vital minerals a dog needs every day. Listen, kennel racing has something else, too, convenience. Just look how easy it is to serve. Open the can, put it into the kennel bar, and just watch your dog gobble it up. He certainly knows what's good. And by the way, folks, if you'd like one of these kennel bars for your dog, just send $1 and 4 kennel ration labels to Kennel Products, Box 5339, Chicago 77, Illinois. That's Kennel Products, Box 5339, Chicago 77, Illinois. And if you love your dog, as I know you do, feed him kennel ration every day. You'll be surprised at how quickly it develops an alert, healthy, and happy disposition. Keep your dog meat happy by serving kennel ration. You know that over 2 million cans are sold every week. Now, Marlon, what's next on the Zoo Parade?
Jim, man has done wonderful things with all kinds of animals. But one of the most unusual partnerships between man and the animals that I know anything at all about is man's relationship on the bees. The ordinary honeybee that originated in Europe. And that honeybee now is found as a semi-domesticated animal all over the world. The remarkable thing about the bees is the fact that these little insects have a perfect organization. They have workers, they have queen bees that lay the eggs, they have drones that have only a very short usefulness and are discarded from the hive. And then they fly free into the surrounding area and collect nectar from the flowers, bring the nectar back to their hives, generate the wax into little cells in the hive, and fill those little individual cells with this wonderful nectar which is evaporated by the wing beats of their own wings. They not only produce this honey, but they cross-fertilize many of the flowers in the orchards and in the fields of all over the country, so you have a complete use there.
Well, that's unusual, too, that cross-pollination. Now, most people know about the honey, but not about that. But I was surprised the other day when you told me of an unusual use that man makes of fish. I always thought of fish as something to eat, but you told me about a very unusual use.
Yes, Jim, there's a little fish that originated in the southern part of the United States, a little fish called gambusia. This little fish is so useful to mankind that he's been transported all over the world and established in places like the swamps of Malaysia or in the Philippine Islands. This little gambusia is so valuable because he feeds almost exclusively on the larvae of mosquitoes. And so in areas of the world where they have a great problem with mosquitoes, they have established these tiny little fish, which are only about an inch long, in the swamps and in the ponds and fields and streams all over the tropical parts and temperate parts of the world. And they are playing a very important part now, and will from here on out, in the control of mosquitoes.
Marlon, I can understand all these unusual uses you've told us of unusual animals, but I still can't believe that there's any good use that man has made of these vicious wolves.
Jim, that is where I'd like to differ with you. Because you think that wolves are vicious? Well, Paul de Tamble, with his two little pals here, with his two timber wolves that were dug up in northern Michigan just this summer, and they're not full grown yet, they're very tame and gentle, and maybe they'll stay that way for a little while. At least primitive man did the same thing, Jim. Primitive man captured wolves as puppies, kept them, see how friendly they are, kept them as puppies in around their homes, and that is the way that many of our dogs have been developed, Jim, from animals like these wolves. You'll find the wolf strain in many of our domestic dogs. So much so that there are several dogs that look almost like wolves, the German Shepherd dogs, for example. And the dogs of the world, in chart form, done by Mr. McGargy, as you see here, show the great variety that dogs have taken in the generations that they have been captive animals, and show, such tremendous variation in body coat, in size, in conformation, in usefulness. Some are hunters, some are just pets, some are used as watchdogs, some are used as racing dogs. There are many, many kinds of dogs, and almost all of these dogs can trace an ancestry. In fact, all of them can trace an ancestry right on back to the wolf. So we have creatures like our wolves here as ancestors to these dogs. And Jim, don't you think it's a wonderful thing that these animals have been developed into such unusual, such wide separation, like, say, a Mexican Chihuahua dog on one side, a little tiny thing, contrasted with a Great Dane?
I certainly do, and I think now, being this close to them, that they're wonderful themselves. But that's just about all the time we have this afternoon. We hope you'll be back again next Sunday afternoon at this same time, when Marlon Perkins will again direct another zoo parade presented to you by Kennel Ration. And that time we're going to talk about some unique and unusual animals that come from Australia. In the meantime, this is Jim Hurlbut saying, if you love your dog, feed him what he needs and craves. Keep your dog meat happy with Kennel Ration, America's first canned dog food. Zoo Parade is produced and directed by Don Meyer. Zoo Parade is produced and directed by Don Meyer. Your technical director is Harry Moore. Zoo Parade came to you direct from Lincoln Park Zoo in Chicago and is presented by Kennel Ration, America's first canned dog food.